doing Scrum, and actually if we ask people, do you think you do Scrum? Yeah, nearly, we're pretty much there. The only reason we're not doing Scrum is because of the customer or because of this. But actually, we're all doing Scrum. And actually what they were saying is, what we've done is we've optimised the way we're working for the component which we're delivering. That's what they were actually saying. So they were using the tools or not using the things to make their life better, but actually not seeing it in the complete context of the game. That's what we learned. And I think if it's one learning we took, is actually we should have probably paid more attention to that. We are big fans of Go and See. I think we should have done a little bit more work there and actually looked at those foundations a bit more than we did. I think we were quite comfortable at the 30,000 feet for a bit too long, and I think that was our first learning there.
Yeah, so use Go See.
Yes.
And I think that I'm a big fan of starting from a position of trust. I think we could have kind of got a bit more data and really understood what the reality was for people, so we knew really how people had to change. So this LeSS adoption, as we've seen it, is like a multiple mixed doubles tennis tournaments. It's how we see this. We have games being played. We have multiple, all these different games going on at the same time. We have all these different courts where it's happening, all happening simultaneously. There's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah.
We have 3 products. Each of those products is different, has different people, is in different locations.
Yeah.
So trying to see all this as a whole, we found it convenient recently to see it like this. Because I suppose inspired by the fact that what you see on the screen are 2 people who are fantastic at tennis individually, but had to learn and find new skills when playing together. So, we have up to 30 teams working across these 3 products. So we're seeing that there's multiple simultaneous games of mixed doubles tennis. The tweak that we made in our analogy is that unlike the game of tennis, this isn't about winning by having the other person not return what you said to them. This is about having a continuous volley. The ball that's passing between the pairs is knowledge, it's commits, it's learning. These are conversations that are happening that are growing their people's skills, growing their knowledge, helping them become more effective, helping them build on their specialisms and create new specialisms. So we want to keep this volley going all the time. I mean, you think that we've got all these different games happening all at the same time. It's constant back and forth of conversation, information, and commits and testing and releases happening across all these different tournaments. It helps us understand the magnitude, I think, of what we were really trying to achieve.
So if you now can see this big picture of this LeSS huge adoption, and now think back to the team that's playing badminton, and not maybe even playing it very well, or the team that's playing squash, or the team that's playing pickleball or paddle, and now you see the journey that they needed to go on. We could see this. We could see the enormity of where we had to get to, and the trick was bringing the organisation along with us, slowly, carefully, not to scare anyone, but that's the direction of travel that we were trying to move into.
And it's our belief that to make a single tournament work well needs an entire team of everyone working towards the same goal. So it's fair to say that yes, you have teams working towards a goal, you may have management working towards a goal, it should be the same goal. And although they may be separate teams, everyone is in some way dependent upon each other. Everyone is relying upon each other to get the job done. So we see each tournament as a massive team effort, which is why we think that LeSS adoptions, they are a team effort. It isn't down to just individual parts or individual people. This is everyone all working together, all trying to head in the direction that is desired. So now we're going to break it down a little bit, and we'll talk about different parts of the game of tennis.
Yes. Okay.
And we'll see what you think. Feel free to give us your opinion as we go through. Because this is one that we could not agree on, so we thought we'd deal with the elephant in the room first.
Yeah.
Fans.
So yeah, fans. So Ben and I spent a lot of time going, if we're going to carry this analogy, I think we can work out what the different roles are. But actually, who are the fans? Are they the customers or are they the communities? And we've both got different views on this, so we're going to get you guys to help us decide which of us is right. Yeah. So, would you like to go first?
I'd love to go first. So, for me, I was convinced yesterday afternoon over a beer by that person sitting over there, Dennis Sharma, for a LeSS trainer, when he, in no uncertain terms, informed me that actually the fans are the customers. The game that is being played, the game of tennis that is being played, is there for people to watch and to enjoy. And that without the fans being there, what do you have in the same way that if you're delivering software with no customers? Who are you delivering the software for? So, in my mind, I saw the customers as the fans. They are integral, they're receiving the value from the game itself.
So in my view, the fans are the communities, because this is about our LeSS adoption. It's about how we want to work as a team. In my view, the customers, of course, they care about us, but actually what they ultimately care about is their digital product. In some ways, do they really care how we're going to deliver it? But we do. It's our team. So the people rooting for our success are us. It's our team members, it's our peers, it's our managers, it's our communities who are going to come together and make this work. They're the ones really cheering us on when we're feeling really low. And to give you a really, really good example, an idea came up in one of our communities, in an improvements community, by a very junior member of staff saying, hey, we've got some issues here around some technical improvements that we could make. The community came together and organised a global hackathon across all of our 5 locations, and it was amazing. So for me, it's the communities. So we're going to take a vote. If you think it's customers, you're going to shout out
juice.
And if you think it's communities, you're going to shout out love. So
okay, so if you think it's customers, please shout out juice.
Juice. But if it's communities, it's
It was close. It was really close. Okay. So the next one is another thing that we've really thought about. So there's, I don't know if this is the correct terminology, but I was doing a little bit of research. Unfortunately, my friend who really understands tennis couldn't make it to the conference this year. But this idea of a chair umpire, the person that sits on the tall chair and looks over what is being played. And I was kind of really, it got me stumped a little bit. For what is the chair umpire scrum? Like giving you feedback, telling you when you're not adhering to the rules? Is it there trying to keep you in check? And I thought, well, no, because scrum doesn't talk to you really. It can show you things, and the people within the system are the people that may stand up and say, hold on, this isn't right, or we're not doing this in the way that we've agreed. So I wasn't so sure that the chair umpire was scrum, and then I had this horrible realisation that actually it's probably us.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think this led to one of our ding moments, isn't it? Ding! Which is, you have to tread this one carefully, because what happens is sometimes you become the embodiment of a framework, or you become an embodiment of some rules, and that's not a comfortable place to be. And so we have to tread this lightly. Somebody has to help people with the rules, but sometimes if you are seen as the umpire, it also backfires on you when you try to create those relationships with people. So it's a very, very tricky one, and in fact it's a tricky theme for us throughout this whole thing. People view Ben and I very differently. And I mean like as individuals, some people see us as umpires, sometimes they see us as the coach, sometimes they see us as players, and it's a really, really tricky one to tread. But be very, very careful with this one. You do still need that umpire, you still need to play by the rules, because otherwise we're not there. But it's a tricky one to tread, so be careful that you don't become the embodiment of the scrum or the LeSS work.
Well, I think this is a team effort.
Yeah.
This is a team effort. It can't be down to a singular person or a couple of people to be the people that are there trying to make sure the rules are being followed, that you're going towards what you're optimising for in a way that you've chosen. That you're getting what you need from this. When you become the embodiment of something abstract,
yes,
it can dehumanise you.
Yeah.
And then that's when things can get more difficult. So we've learned to not always preach the book, and being the umpire for this can really backfire.
Yeah. Yeah, so the next one is players being the development teams, and maybe that sounds really obvious, but actually it wasn't always obvious, because in some teams they only played their star players. They didn't play the whole team. In some teams, the managers were the players. In some teams, they thought Ben and I were going to be the players. So it may sound really, really simple, but nothing is so simple that it can't be misunderstood in a way. So I think one of the things that I think we really learned was actually sort of going back to the basics and talking about the roles that we will all play together. As Ben keeps saying, it's a team sport.
It's just to reiterate, it's broader than just the development teams. It's everyone working together.
Yeah.
And if you look at Serena Williams and Andy Murray, both very, very skilled as individuals, had to work on a new type of specialism to work together. It's a different type of effort. And the same is true of the teams, is that we have excellent specialists who've been specialists in their component for a long time. And what we wanted to be is have a broader specialism to learn new skills, to get better at what they're doing, to really grow, and to do that in a team environment where they're supporting each other.
I think we've put here poor people operations, because remember, when you start with a LeSS adoption, of course the definition of done is quite small, but actually we were doing this in a large bank which has a huge operations department around that we obviously need, and are integral to our success. And to use analogy, you know, they're the ball boys, they're the ones who are helping keep the lawn mowed and draw the lines again and put the nets at the right length. They are integral to the success. We've got to bring everyone along on the journey, even though they might feel quite distant from it, and show them that love and show them that connection and show them where we're going. It's really, really important that we made that connection and that they are part of that journey.
And make them feel part of a team.
Yeah.
So for this one, I think this is maybe my favourite, is that if you imagine a tennis court and you've got this lovely symmetrical court with the lines drawn out beautifully on lovely luscious green grass, you have a net of a certain height, you having even the colour of the top of the net, how they do, I think that's very specific, it's a certain width. All these constraints that are laid out in front of you, I'd like to see as the LeSS rules and framework. These are the boundaries in which you operate. Now, there's a huge amount you can do within that. You have a certain amount of freedom, but you're within these constraints which enable you to achieve different things.
Yes.
The challenge. Well, maybe we'd like to talk about where this idea came from.
Well, yes, it's really funny because one of the inspirations that came for making this our analogy was, again, from one of our bosses, who talked about the beauty of the game of tennis, that the beauty of the game of tennis is these rules. If there were no lines or no net, it'd be a very boring game. But the beauty of it is watching someone just clear the net, just land the ball in a certain place. That's what makes it a beautiful game. That's what makes it so thrilling. So the importance is to keep that integrity. That's what makes it good, and not to change any of that or compromise on it, because actually you lose the integrity of the game. And I think, do we have a ding moment?
We have a ding.
A ding! So this is what we're saying. So when we're meeting people, of course, they're not professional tennis players yet. They're probably quite daunted by what they're seeing. And we hear the word pragmatic a lot, don't we? Can we be pragmatic about this? Look, it's a really big pitch, and we can't do an overhead, so can we be pragmatic? Yes, we can, but what it doesn't mean is we take anything away from the LeSS framework. So what it doesn't mean is we don't change the rackets, we don't make the ball bigger, we don't lower the net. We stay a bit stubborn on this. But what we do is we help people. Maybe we start off a bit closer to the net. Maybe we do underhands, we don't do backhands yet. It's all about taking people through the journey, but meeting them where they are and taking them slowly through it. But what we mustn't do, and this is one of our ding moments, is ever lose sight of the fact that we compromise on any of the integrity of the framework.
I'm a firm believer that there's so much room for pragmatism within the constraints you're presented with.
Yeah.
And I think it's where having good quality coaching is hugely important, to meet people where they are and to help people grow and evolve, to untap the potential that they've got to get better and grow these extra skills. So what role would a change manager or group play in this game? If this was a game of tennis, what role would they have? And it's a question that stumped us, really. And we couldn't really think of an answer within our analogy. One thing we can say is that when we started the journey, when we really started to look at defining this new model of operation for the organisation, heavily based and influenced upon LeSS, there was a collective opinion, but there was no room for that role. Which wasn't something that we wanted. None of us wanted particularly. The people, those of us that have helped start and run this, because it makes it seem like it's something that's getting done to people. Now, it would have been so much easier at times to have got someone to put a lick of paint on it, a consultant comes and they sell it to you, they make things look a bit different, use some new technology and leave and declare success. But that wasn't what we wanted. We wanted the organisation to grow, to evolve. And we wanted it to be a team effort, so that everyone is playing their part, and it's not down to a single person. But this goes much deeper than just kind of looking after our journey towards using less huge.
One of the things that was suggested to us when we first started was, how about we start with a pilot? Low risk, break it off, and we'll just do something, pilot it, and then see how it goes, and if we like it, we'll adopt it. And again, this goes back to, I think, Ben and I sort of sticking our heels in a little bit, because the problem with the word pilot is it sounds optional. It's a bit like, well, we'll see it, if we like it, we'll take it or not. And that's no way to start, in our opinion. We've got to start setting down the roots. So yes, we did start small, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but it's really important that we actually start off with the intent to go, and with that determination. So that was really important to us. Although we are massive supporters of trying experiments out, this was something we didn't want to experiment with. We were starting with a strong intent.
And this led to another ding.
Yes. Ding.
Because if we're going to evolve and we're going to grow, this is going to be a team effort, and we're really going to achieve what we know our people are capable of achieving. Right? And we're going to have happier people and happier customers. We need everyone to have real ownership of where we're going and how we intend to get there. What we don't want is any kind of fake ownership. We don't want anybody, not that we've really seen it, but there's this idea that people may in public be indifferent to an idea, but in private dissent. Thinking about, for those of you that were here, the bosses talk earlier, talking about the destructive political activities, talking behind people's backs, perhaps lying, having one-on-one conversations, these kind of things. We didn't want that. We needed a change which involved everyone, so everyone's there to answer questions, everyone's there to support each other, and we're not divesting the ownership and the problems that are going to arise to a third party and letting them try and solve our problem for us, because we knew that wouldn't work.
So to give a really good example, as you know, the role of product owner normally sits within the business. And originally we were like, well, we're technology, so we can't do this because the business aren't ready for this. So we worked with the business. We've got great business support. And what we agreed was actually the role of product owner to start with would actually sit within technology, but really importantly, not as a proxy and not as a fake, as a true product owner who was empowered to make decisions. And that's key. So we had our customers on site helping us with this role. And I think this is what we're talking about. Like, there's some things that if you want to do it right, you have to dig your heels in and not compromise on. And not having that proxiness or that fakeness was really, really important to set the tone from the beginning.
Of course, no, if we're talking about tennis, it only seems fair that we should talk about John McEnroe somewhat. And I think, although I can't recall anybody, I think at least once I heard someone say, you can't be serious. Like, this is really what we want to do. And it just struck us that until people really love the idea of less and less huge and moving towards it, maybe in principle, but when they realise what it was really all about, the level of organisational change, what it means for their software quality, that's for their technical architecture, that it provides opportunities for people to grow and get better at what they do, then it makes them less keen. I believe, and I may be wrong on this, but I think John McEnroe is used in Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, talking about having a fixed mindset. Someone who's very fixed on what they think they are able to do and takes a great deal of offence when someone brings them up on something, or someone challenges that fixed mind of themselves. So this is one of the things that we've set ourselves for this year, is that we know we need to change, and one thing we know is that we don't need any more heroes.
Yeah.
So,
we were saying, at the beginning of this year, we did actually set out some rules. We were calling them the big five in our department. But one of them we came up with was no more heroes. And we've called it out explicitly, which is a really interesting thing to do, to set as a cultural tone across the whole of our department. And again, we've heard some talks earlier today talking about this, because that was in some ways the default way of rewarding people. So now we have made that change. So it's really, really important that we have some of these cultural changes going through as well. So we as a department did come up with a few extra sort of principles that we felt that we were going to hold ourselves accountable to. And whilst we're talking about that, actually, we should probably talk about the adoption principles themselves. So we did follow the LeSS adoption principles. It was really important to us, and they were a fantastic help to us. So for this next section, we're going to talk about the principles and the order in which we implemented them, which some things I think had better success than the others.
Yeah, and to be fair, next time we start something off, we'll probably approach these in a different order. So, the first one, top down and bottom up. Now, this helps us with our team analogy, saying that this type of adoption is a team effort, a whole team effort, because you will need the people at the top. And I'm not quite keen on this idea of the bottom. I think it creates a wrong mental image, because the people at the bottom are the people doing the real work. So you need the people doing the real work, and you need the people who are more senior to them to come together. You need both to work as a team. And I think this is where I think our situation has been somewhat unique in some respects. Because we are two directors in the organisation. You know, I'm a LeSS trainer, and so there's a candidate LeSS trainer, and we are the senior people in the organisation, which in some respects makes things much easier, and I'm guessing in some ways probably makes things maybe harder at times.
Yeah, I mean, certainly one of the things that happened before we came in was the senior management who hired us actually did spend at least 6 months going around the organisation, selling the idea, getting it all prepared with their technology partners and also with the customers and the users. So we already had that buy-in from a very senior level, from a top-down view. Then when we were hired in, at that time, Ben was one of the few handful of LeSS trainers in the UK, and I think having him in as a director set an enormous message to the organisation that, look, this is how serious we are about LeSS, that we've got one of the directors sitting around the table who is a LeSS trainer. This is how much we believe in this. And I think that was a very, very, very powerful message, certainly that I felt, that the teams felt when you joined.
And of course, I don't forget Saloni's role in the organisation. Right? They're looking over talent and then challenging the organisation to say we need our people to grow. Yeah. And being in these positions does help. And I think the one thing that is maybe a hallmark of our style is that we don't just sit in our lovely ivory towers. I suppose I'm a scrum master. That's what I try and spend as much of my time doing. I work with a fantastic team. So I'm there, I see the real work, I spend time in the real work, I help out with the impediments. I get a completely different view from a lot of our peers, the same as you. You're very good with the teams, you're very good with people.
It also means that we can put our money where our mouth is. Because we do have the seat at the table to affect those changes. So you alluded to the talent strategy. It means that we can actually do stuff. We can have those conversations with HR which talk about the progression of a Scrum Master's role or the career path of a product owner. So this is something which I feel very privileged to be in this position, to be able to affect real change from within an organisation. So it's something I think we both feel very humbled and very privileged to do, and it really it's good.
It's fantastic, and it helps. The last time I'll do it, but the destructive digital activities that Bas was talking about this morning. Being there with the teams, seeing the data, understanding the reality means that we are able to challenge and we are able to work around exaggerations and provide real information and help our peers learn more about what's happening on the ground, and that is incredibly valuable. But all of this comes at somewhat of a cost, because we often get in our own way.
We have to learn to move ourselves out of our way sometimes, because it happens. You can imagine that we've got a lot of LeSS practitioners, of course. Ben's given a lot of training, certified training. But the problem is, if one of us walks into the room, immediately everyone turns to us to say, can you solve this problem because you're here? So sometimes we have to remove ourselves from the conversations for it to happen, for the teams to grow. But it's really hard, it's really tricky to know in advance whether that's what's going to happen, because sometimes we do need to be there, to have the backs of the guys, to show them that we're sat there supporting them. And we need to be at those conversations to sort of help endorse some of those conversations and move some of those behaviours forward. So it is a tricky one. That's often in hindsight we've worked out what we should have done, but it's still something we're navigating through.
Yeah, I think development teams should solve their own problems. All teams should solve their own problems, even in a broader sense, and that's something that we definitely a development area for us. So if that was top down and bottom up, the next principle is actually our most problematic, the one that caused us probably the most heartache.
Yeah, I think when we talked about the order in which we did this, maybe we think we started this one too early, because of course there was a lot of enthusiasm. Everyone was like, yeah, this is great, let's be a volunteer. But, volunteers need nurturing. They are like a garden. You need to help them thrive. But actually, at this point, we hadn't really worked out a direction of travel. So actually, what happened was we had a lot of enthusiasm, and I think Ben and I found it really hard to work out how to channel some of that enthusiasm.
It's very easy. I mean, we've always found it very easy to find those initial 5 to 10% of people who really are really interested in this for whatever reason. It's easy to find them. We just found it really hard initially to find things for them to swarm around and to really work on that was meaningful.
So, ding. When you do think about volunteering, be more structured than we were. Think ahead. Think about what kind of people will want to join, things that they can do. You don't want to be making work for the sake of working. People want to be usefully, gainfully using their minds. So I think in hindsight, I think we would have attacked this very differently to make sure that we got the best out of people and kept them motivated and enthused about the journey they were going on, which I think we found quite hard because we started a little bit too early.
Yeah, because we looked at volunteering, we executed volunteering before we really focused and understood how we're going to go deep and narrow. How are we going to find that, an area of one of the products to begin? I think if we had done this first, people would have been able to engage in a much different way and exploit the skills that they had in the ways that they had been, but find new ways as well. But we were lacking that. So I think that if we had gone deep and narrow, defined where we were starting, made the relevant changes, our volunteers would have been more satisfied and we would have made better use of them.
Yeah.
But I think if we could say that we have been successful anyway, I think it's around when we got round to it, how we went deep and narrow.
I think if we're going to blow our own trumpet, I think we did really well on this one. So, I mean, we really put a lot of energy into the deep and narrow, so we actually took this one very literally, and we didn't go broad and shallow. We looked at an area, we put a lot of focus and energy in it, we carved out an area that we wanted to deliver, that went across all the areas and went for it. And then I think we managed to do this within 3 or 4 weeks. I think we managed to get the right people in the room, the right sponsorship, work out what that product was, worked out a product roadmap, a vision, an organisational vision of perfection, and I think we achieved loads of good stuff out of that piece of work.
Yeah, which leads us to another light bulb moment, which is that we recommend define your product with energy and commitment and bravery, and make the necessary organisational changes. We went from a component-based organisation, where people were based around technical components and all driven by projects, to an organisation which consists of 3 products, with teams now working across many of those components. We made those changes, we made the decisions quite quickly, and the organisational changes happened quite quickly. When that happened, things got easier for us. in some respects. They got harder in many other ways, but then it was real for people. And people could see that it was more than just rhetoric, we were actually doing something about it. Yeah. So we really feel that this is something we would always do again, is to really get on this, in fact, much earlier than we did do. So working in small batches, which is what we did initially, we had a small batch of, we were doing it team by team for a while, and then in batches of a couple of teams. It was good in many respects.
Yeah, well, because we could control quite a lot of things, we could put some support around it. I think the really important thing that we also did was to be really clear about the success criteria of what this piece of work was and what it wasn't. And what it definitely wasn't there to solve every organisational problem that we had. And it was really important to set that out, because otherwise people put a lot of emphasis on what success looks like. So it was really, really important to set out what we expected, so to set some of those expectations. But it worked really well because it meant that we had an area that was working in a new way that people would come and engage with and see the new ways of working, could ask the questions. There was a complete transparency, and it felt very different. And I think that was quite a nice thing about it.
But what was hard about it was that we brought people together who had worked on technical components they hadn't worked on before. Working in ways that they maybe weren't that familiar with. And so what was happening was that the teams were spending time learning, which is absolutely what we wanted to do. They were playing their game of tennis, the ball was going back and forward. Every now and again though, the ball would drop. There'd be an unexpected issue, and things would slow down further whilst they fixed the issue. So with all of with earning superseding, with earning coming second to learning a lot of the time so that people could be effective, with the issues that were coming up because of a lot of the changes and a lot of the ideas that were coming about, what was happening is that people were finding it difficult to build momentum for a while. Things weren't as speedy as perhaps some people would have liked. With expectations too high, it does get to a point where you get close to a point where you think, well, have we bitten off more than we could chew? But we knew that with this type of change, with moving to feature teams, that the payoff for the learning and the resolution of issues and those improvements isn't something you're probably going to get immediately. It will take time. So with some perseverance and some patience, we got there.
Yeah, timing is everything as well, because as we point to for a while then you're running with a two-mode organisation. Which is difficult, because there's people who are working in the new way, who are very excited, want to keep moving forward, want to do things like stop and fix. But it's hard to do that when you're using a shared code base and the rest of the organisation is doing it slightly differently. You want to make sure the other guys and the other things don't feel left out. Like, when's it our turn? You don't want them to lose enthusiasm in the way they're working. So it's really important that we don't overload people, because of course, remember, we're talking about all this learning that's going on, and at the same time keeping the pace just right, that everyone stays engaged and everyone feels that they're still pulling towards the same way without losing any of their motivation. So the timing is tricky, especially as we talked about it. We're talking about 30 teams across five locations.
Other hurdles we overcame, so they were the LeSS principles. We lost some key people, some great people, or not lost in a morbid way, they just found other opportunities. And it was hard to say goodbye to them.
Yeah, and it's hard because we talk about, one of the nice things about working in this organisation way of working is that you sort of lose your key man dependencies, but in the beginning it's really important to have those people who are sort of the people who come and really infuse their culture. So some of these people are really, really key seeds of sort of change and where they are. And we've had to put a lot of energy into these people to get them up and going. So every time we lose one, it's a real setback. And remember, although we were enthusiastic on day one with team one, we've got to maintain that level of enthusiasm and drive for the 5th team, and then the 15th team, and then the 25th team. So actually keeping that energy and that motivation and that vision up actually is quite a big thing to do. But it's something that, we try to do every day.
And when people will leave, and it will be sad, but we always make sure we leave that we try and help people leave in the way that's right for them. they've made a decision, we respect that and we will support them as much, helping them find their next opportunity or their transition to the next opportunity as we would do caring about them if they were still going to be part of the team. We also have this idea, when you look at the synopsis of our talk, we talk about change managers, and to get a bit more detail on it, I think at times we would have loved to have had someone who we could have just divested some of the problems to and make it their problem, pay a highly priced management consultant to come in and put a nice gloss of paint over some of the cracks, declare success and then go away. We probably would have got a bit more sleep at times, a fewer grey hairs. But I think we're glad that we didn't take that route. That this is a change that we've been able to, increasingly able to come from within, to the point where it becomes self-sustaining and we are not dependent upon the change manager. If we want and are getting an organisation where there is always continuous problem solving. Right? So we are always finding ways to improve. And if we had had someone in to manage the change and to run it as a separate project, there would be a lack of ownership through all levels, and we wouldn't be where we are today. So our conclusions. Number one, what we found incredibly useful is to be nice, be open and be humble. If you are nice to people, even when they're maybe not so nice to you, it shows that you can be, you can rise above it somewhat. Being open to change and being open to challenge and being humble by accepting the fact that you are dependent upon other people to get things done. We have to work as a team is of fundamental importance.
Politely demand facts. Those of you who were in Bas's talk earlier, he mentioned this as well, and it sometimes can get quite emotional or emotive in some of the conversations when we're going through something which is behavioural change. So if you can be polite, but also always talk to some facts and figures, it really does help us along the journey.
Being brave and admitting your mistakes. No one is right all the time, and I think it takes a lot of emotional growth. I think for me personally, just to stand up and say, you know, I've made a mistake. I have to learn from this. And then being able to openly admit that, creating that safe environment so other people in your team can also say, yeah, I made a mistake too, and fess up to that is hugely important. It really increases, it can help to increase the level of psychological safety that you can achieve, which is key to any team's performance.
Be stubborn when you need to. Trust your instincts. There are times, of course, when you have to be pragmatic about, but there are times when you just have to put your heels down and be stubborn and hold tight and really hold tight. And you might feel like you're the only one, but you've got to hold tight sometimes and hold your nerve.
We've tried really hard to stick to the LeSS guidance, and we've experimented with it a lot, and we'd recommend other people experiment with it too. One thing that we've done a number of times now is do very large group facilitation, take some of the inspiration from some of the guides and some of the experiments, and just scale that up. You know, getting 100 people together to try and define an organisational perfection vision or to try and understand the architecture, getting people involved and engaged with it that way is something we would highly recommend.
And probably most importantly, have a close friend at work. I think if I'd been there on my own, I think I would have been mad or an alcoholic by now. So I'm very pleased to have Ben and others actually around me, because it is hard. You invest so much of yourself into this. You know, it's draining and it's emotional, all highs and lows. So actually, I'm really pleased I've had a partner in crime all along in this. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd only repeat what you said. Having a close friend at work is massively important. Having someone that you can turn to, someone you can vent at, someone who can tell you the truth, is incredibly useful, I think, regardless of whether it's a less huge adoption or not. So, you can grab us for questions if you see us around, right? We can buy you a beer and you can give us a hard time, and we're down with that. The analogy which we've presented and the things that we've said is not perfect. It's our attempt at trying to rationalise the last 18 months of our lives. And we are open to your questions, but there are some things that we could not figure out in our analogy, which kind of made us wonder perhaps isn't the right one. But when we're thinking of this tournament, of all these mixed doubles tennis games, there are certain roles within Scrum that we couldn't quite figure out within LeSS, that we couldn't quite figure out where they belong. So we're interested to hear your thoughts. I was meant to change Sega to Scrum, but I didn't quite get around to it. In our analogy of this mixed doubles tennis, what role does the Scrum Master play? Does anyone have any suggestions?
Trainer.
Trainer. Lovely. Anything else? We'll stick with trainer. So version 2 of this, now Scrum Master Trainer. So let's see if we can get another one knocked off. Management. So in LeSS, the role of manager is optional, but we have to find in LeSS huge. You're going to have some semblance of management, at least if not forever, at least initially. So we weren't able to figure out what role the management could play. Pardon? Tournament organizer, perhaps there's something there. Defining the structure, the policy, some of the processes. I think I like that. Thank you. And we had an idea that perhaps we were the umpires, but we're not really so sure. So maybe if you did want to explore this with us, please come and find us. Have a drink with us. Help us go deeper on our mind a little bit and help us answer the question. So with that, we'd like to thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.